everyone. My name's Ryan Wainwright. I am the North American brand ambassador for Bombay Gins, and very excited to be here with you talking a little bit about the gin renaissance and hopefully making a fun little cocktail with you as well. The thing that really stands out to me and makes me realize that the US in particular is entering a gin renaissance is the fact that I'm starting to see people returning to the classics of gin, in the sense that the martini originally and a lot of these cocktails that people enjoy these days were originally designed with gin. And people are starting to reach back out there to kind of infuse some more flavor into their cocktails, if you will. The last time people would have seen gin in the US would have been before Prohibition. Because of Prohibition and because of a lot of the things that were being produced during Prohibition, like those flavoring additives that people were being given to add to their poorly made spirits to make it taste like gin, I think gin really fell out of favor and became put on the side burner, where you started to see things like rum and rye whiskey take the lead, which were being made more locally. The reason it's taken so long for the US to come around to gin, I think, has a lot of different perspectives. You could say that one, first and foremost, it's just a lack of understanding. Things like juniper berries and a lot of the herbs, spices, and botanicals that you find in gin are not common in the United States, and those flavors haven't really been a huge part of our diet. So it really is something that is unique and different for Americans specifically. Juniper berries, really, people only think of the fact that it tastes like Christmas trees to them. That's what they think of when they think of juniper berries. Whereas, once you start to dive into the terroir of juniper berries and the different means to extract flavor, you start to realize there's a big depth of flavor behind juniper itself. Obviously, the leader of the pack in the clear spirits category is vodka, and tequila is the new darling to the stage. I do believe that there is room in the community of clear spirits, if you will, for gin. Gin really does add something unique that those other two spirits don't have. Gin is truly an expression of a distiller. It's a layering of flavors. It's an artistic expression of their vision for what they want to see. Gin truly is the only spirit that must be mixed. Doing gin shots and things like that doesn't exist. So this mixable spirit, this true cocktail darling, is always going to be present, and I think people are going to grasp at it more and more as they continue to enjoy cocktails. For someone that hasn't tried gin before, I highly recommend taking in whatever it is that you love and putting gin in it, seeing how to play around with it. It's sort of like experimenting with a new ingredient in the kitchen. Grab those ingredients that you're already a big fan of and start to play around with how gin interlaces into that cocktail. Odds are the cocktail that you enjoy was probably originally created with gin in mind. And so it will seamlessly integrate. Whether it's a margarita, which is just a classic daisy, and which a gin daisy was one of the first daisies to ever be made, or perhaps it's a Moscow Mule, and adding a little bit of extra flavor and robustness to that drink can really go a long way. For me personally, one of my favorite cocktails to reach for when I think about gin, I tend to like very light and effervescent drinks. I like to drink really bright. I live here in Miami. It's always hot 24/7. So something refreshing is always on the docket for me. So I wanted to make today really a classic Collins of sorts with a little bit of a twist again. For me, the Collins is just the most refreshing gin cocktail. It mixes your London dry style gin. We're going to be using Bombay Sapphire today with fresh citrus, a little bit of simple syrup, which is just sugar and water combined equal parts, and some club soda. That's a classic Collins. And as I said, we're going to add a little bit of bitters on top to really add some spices and depth to it. But first we're going to grab the gin. As I mentioned, we're using Bombay Sapphire. I like to go 1.5 ounces on this. ounce and a half. And if you don't have a jigger at home, I highly recommend grabbing any sort of measuring device. A shot glass will work. Anything really that you have laying around the house. Teaspoon, tablespoon measures are great as well. Really what you want to keep in mind is if you do 1 part of gin, you're going to do a half part of lemon and a half part of simple syrup. So you can use anything. I use a jigger because old habits die hard, but we did 1.5 ounces of our Bombay Sapphire, 60 milliliters if you're out there. And the reason we're using Bombay Sapphire today is because of that vapor distillation that Bombay Sapphire is uniquely known for. We actually suspend our botanicals, and during the distillation process, the alcohol vapor passes through the botanicals rather than being boiling in there. And what that ends up with is a really, truly bright and honest expression of the 10 botanicals that you have in here. And the juniper berries, because they are from Tuscany, are that bright, citrus, bright, refreshing, herbaceous flavor. And it pairs perfectly with fresh lemons. So go ahead, grab a lemon, cut that in half. I've got some beautiful lemons from here in Florida, but lemons are really nice to go with gin across the board, whether you're having a bee's knees or a Collins or even a nice martini with a lemon twist. Goes great. And I'm going to squeeze 3/4 of an ounce, 30 milliliters if you're out there, or also just half of whatever you did with this. 3/4 an ounce right in there. So then we're going to grab the simple syrup, and I know everyone's a little scared to use sugar these days. This is just equal parts sugar and water, and it's meant to balance out the tartness of the lemons and the oomph of the Bombay here. You're welcome to use honey, agave, anything like that. Just make sure if you do use honey or agave that you add a little bit of water to bring it down. I usually do 3 parts honey to water, 1 part water, or 3 parts agave to 1 part water. Just because if you put straight honey in your mixing tin, it'll gum up in there and it won't dissolve into the drink super easily. So 3/4 an ounce of whatever your preferred sweetener is. I've also seen people use different artificial sweeteners if you're so inclined, but I'm going with the OG sugar for myself. And we're going to pour a little bit of ice in our Collins glass. You could also do this in a cocktail flute should you be celebrating, or any other glass, depending. We're just going to fill this with some nice ice here. Perfect. And we're going to do what I like to call a chip shake, or other people call a whip shake. And it literally is, if you're adding dilution of another kind, whether it be tonic water, club soda, ginger beer, ginger ale, whatever it may be, lemonade, you want to shake still to get some oxygen into your drink, but you don't want to over dilute. So I just grab 1 little ice cube here and I throw it in and I shake with just that 1 little ice cube till the ice cube is dissolved. And that way we're going to aerate this cocktail and chill it slightly without diluting it too much. So we're going to pour all that in there and we're going to give a little quick shake. Here we go. Cool thing about a whip shake too is you don't have to look super pretty. You don't have to be all fancy because you're just whipping it around literally. So any kind of shake, you go like this. You can do the bartender shake if you like, whatever suits your fancy to show off to your guests or just to yourself. And we're going to pour that straight into our glass. See how lovely and bubbly that is? That's what you want with that Collins. You want all that air bubbles in there. That makes it super refreshing. We're going to pop our club soda here and pour that in. I'm going to add a couple more ice cubes just to make the balance right. There we are. And usually you want between 2 to 4 ounces of club soda, depending on your personal preference. Again, people are always so excited to experiment in the kitchen and always so intimidated to do so behind the bar. And I challenge you to experiment. Try it with a little bit of club soda, then add a little more. Try it with another mixer that you fancy. Play around. I love a nice Collins with a little bit of bitter lemon. Really pops the lemon even more. One of my favorites for sure. And then for me personally, I love just a couple of dashes of Angostura bitters on top. It adds a cool color and I do like that bitter flavor that it adds, the nutmeg, the baking spices. You can stir it up and it kind of seeps in there like that, or you can have it just on top and drink through it, however you fancy. And then we've got a nice little twist we can throw on top just to make it look super special. But this is my my bittered Collins, as I like to call it. And I did make one earlier with our Bombay Bramble, which is our fun new expression, blackberry and raspberry infused London dry gin. You can do it, this is the exact same recipe and proportions because there is no sugar added to Bramble. It's just the infusion of blackberry and raspberry into our London dry gin. It's exceptionally dry with 9 grams of sugar per liter, so you don't have to adjust the recipe at all. You just make the same exact drink. I threw it in a champagne flute because looks delightful in there, but hopefully it inspire you to make something, try out some of those classic drinks that you love, and throw a little gin in there.